and indeed the shape of the whole European Union overall. And that could make for quite a lively exchange later on today. Joining us now from Berlin with more what we can expect from this meeting is Fred Eichen. Fred, the UK has long been using this Eurozone crisis to sort of further its own ambitions. What kind of meeting is this going to be like? It could be pretty fraught.
It could indeed be pretty fraught. Some German newspapers are already calling this potentially a friendly conversation without tea. And you're absolutely right. There are some very differing views, both on the Eurozone as well as indeed the entire shape of the future of the European Union. Angela Merkel, of course, believes that the austerity plans and the bailout measures that have already been put in place and that are currently being worked on are going to be enough. She wants the bailout measures that have been decided on to be able to unfold first. Obviously, the British Prime Minister takes a far different view. He feels that the European Central Bank needs to be more involved in the bailout of countries like Italy and Spain as well, and also that Germany needs to be more financially involved as well. Angela Merkel was at a press conference yesterday. She held a speech there, and she said that any country that believes that the European Central Bank is going to be able to solve the Eurozone crisis, she believes that simply isn't going to be the case. She thinks that only political reforms are going to lead to the end of the Eurozone crisis. And then, of course, you have this whole big topic, which is a really very interesting one, and that's the one of this sort of Europe moving at two different speeds, where you have the Eurozone countries that are starting to have their own summits, that are making their own decisions, and then you have countries who are in Europe, inside the EU, but outside of the Eurozone. And, of course, the UK and Britain is, of course, a country that is very much also going to have issues with the Eurozone crisis, however, has absolutely no say in how the Eurozone crisis is being dealt with, and that's certainly something that David Cameron is not very happy about, Nina.
Frederick, a lot of this hinges on potential treaty change. We're talking about changing the framework, the legal framework that governs the EU, and that's one of the things that David Cameron really doesn't want to see.
Yes, he was talking about sort of utopian vision a couple of days ago and said that politicians really shouldn't get bogged down with that. That, of course, was a straight shot at Angela Merkel. She also touched on that yesterday when she held a speech. She said that she felt that European integration had always been a work in process, and that certainly the Lisbon Treaty would not be the end-all of European integration. She feels that Germany and other countries are going to try and move European integration forward. And the big question on that is, of course, fiscal and financial integration, where Angela Merkel feels that the European Union, in the medium term, run, really. And that's something that's really unique for that kind of thinking, because we know that any sort of decisions and treaty changes inside the European Union usually take decades to implement. But she feels that in the medium run, the European Union should have more powers to punish countries that consistently bust their budget. And if you will, that countries like potentially now Germany that actually have quite a good budget could essentially file a suit against countries that consistently bust their budget. She feels that those kind of mechanisms should be in place. Of course, that's something that Britain is not very fond of either. So you're absolutely right. This is a really a conversation that Angela Merkel and David Cameron are going to have a meeting that could be quite chilly, if you will, and where there will be a lot of very differing views on a lot of subjects, you know.
Contentious stuff. Thanks ever so much, Fred Eichen, joining us from Berlin. Andrew.
Well, David Cameron and Angela Merkel and many others too will be looking at Spain this weekend as the country goes to the polls there. Spain's general election is taking place against the backdrop of bond yields that we've been talking about. They've risen close to the unsustainable 7% level, and unemployment among young people now running at around 45%. Well, our downriver spoke to some young Spaniards who explained their difficulties in finding work and who they blame for